Too critical to fail. How Canada manages threats to critical infrastructure. Written by Kevin Quigley, Ben Bisset, and Brian Mills.
Too critical to fail is an examination of the factors that influence how governments regulate risk to critical infrastructure.
There are many definitions to critical infrastructure. It is a difficult concept to define, but generally speaking, it's systems, networks, and structures that we rely on every day in our lives. They often go on behind the scenes, unnoticed, sort of the skeleton of society.
Post 9/11 really brought into focus a lot of important vulnerabilities that government had outsourced in the 80s and 90s, and now they didn't really own and operate the critical assets upon which we depend every day. So post 9/11, when you're in a 9/11 environment saying, well, how are we managing risks to infrastructure, whether it's security or environmental risks or whatever, the government didn't necessarily have a solid answer on that.
Who's managing these risks? Who's making sure Canadians are safe and secure? Is it government, private sector? Are Canadians largely left to their own devices to make decisions about risk?
Lac Mégantic really, a lot of the patterns that we see in infrastructure failures played out. I mean, one of the things that's interesting about these kinds of events is when they happen, everybody thinks they're so unique, right? Oh, this would never happen again. Who would have seen this coming? Who would have predicted it? And to a degree, they're right. But actually the patterns of the institutions, the media, the owners, operators, the regulators, they're actually quite predictable. And what was troubling to a degree, I guess, with Lac Mégantic was that we saw a lot of those patterns that we had seen many times before play out. And it's troubling because it was so consequential.
Really what we argue in the book is that there needs to be more accountability. There needs to be opportunities for the public to understand why certain regulatory decisions are made, who is accountable and why. That's not always easy, obviously, given the different priorities that the government and industry have, and industry often isn't interested in having those kinds of conversations.
We have to think carefully, though, about what is a reasonable degree of accountability. Otherwise, there will be, we will continue to see blame shifting and blame management, and we will continue to have vulnerabilities in our infrastructure as a consequence. So I think we need to think carefully about that accountability system and what it looks like in a modern, highly interdependent, highly globalized environment.
Too critical to fail. How Canada manages threats to critical infrastructure. Written by Kevin Quigley, Ben Bisset, and Brian Mills. Published by McGill-Queens University Press.